Okay, we're back, kids, and with us today is Mark Taylor. Now, you kids know Mark Taylor because you've heard his voice when we played the podcasts of Education on Fire at PE class. That's one of the podcasts that I was a guest on out of England. So, Mark is coming to us from England. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Mark for a minute. He is sitting currently in his home about 65 miles north of London, England, in a place called Rode, Northamptonshire. Mark is a professional timpanist. The timpani is a drum. It's like a kettle drum, and he does this. That's what he does for a living. Graduated from the Trinity College of Music. He's played his drums in some places, some important places like the BBC Orchestra and the English National Ballet, among many other places. But Mark right now is best known for, and he's best known to us, as the creator of the Education on Fire podcast. And the Education on Fire podcast is what you heard me on, and a lot of other real important people in the world of education. So Mark is joining us to talk with us today in PE about PE. So welcome, Mark. Thank you for joining us from England.
Coach Hart, it's a real pleasure to see you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thanks. I super appreciate you being here. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, Mark. And the first one I want to ask you is to think back to your days as a child growing up in England. And what do you remember about PE class?
So the thing that always strikes me is it kind of fell into different areas. We had a PE class in our school hall, which was also our lunch hall, and we had sort of a frame, an apparatus that came out where we were able to do a certain amount of climbing, a certain amount of kind of experimentation on that kind of thing. That was one thing that I always remember. We also did some sort of gymnastics related stuff. Bean bags, floor mats, sort of general sort of stretching and general sort of movement. We also did some country dancing. Towards the end of the year, we'd actually do sort of a joint thing, a little bit like you've been doing at your school there, sort of coming together and doing sort of a maypole fair and some country traditional dancing here from the UK. So we did a little bit of that. And then also sports day was a big thing. So once we sort of hit the summer, that kind of, racing and sack racing and all those traditional ones that we used to do back then, as well as sort of just fast racing as well. And that was kind of our general PE lessons that we did as part of our school. And then beyond that, if you were into cricket, if you were into football and soccer, that kind of thing, that was sort of an extra thing that you could then take. But yeah, that was kind of my sort of my memories of all those PE classes.
I loved it when listening to Education on Fire. I love the fact that you had a PE season and that you devoted a part of your podcast just to PE. Why is that? Why was that important for you to do that?
Well, one of the things here in the UK is the class teachers of children, all the way from when they start in reception, sort of 4 years old, up until 11 years old. The same teacher generally covers most of the education, whether it's maths, whether it's English, PE. And there are certain things that people are more happy about teaching, and PE was one of those which I often heard was the things they sort of struggled with a little bit or weren't quite sure what to do. So what I wanted to do was to share great practice, get people on to talk about exactly what they did as specialists, which they could then share that information to some of the less confident teachers that were having to do it. And it also opened the debate about what PE is within the class, and whether that just happens to be physical exercise, but actually much more about that, the education side of it, how it fitted into other subjects, how you were able to bring all of that together. And I wanted to have those conversations and get people thinking about it, because PE is sort of with you for life. It sets you up in so many ways for the rest of your education, but also your life as a whole. And so I felt it needed that little bit of focus.
That's great. So there was a practical element, helping people who had to teach PE but may not have had the training in PE. People that listen to your podcast. That's interesting. No, I agree with you. Now, what my question? You said something interesting about trying to define what PE is, because that's kind of like an open question in some ways. We have our own idea of what PE is at Cypress Woods, but my question to you is, what do you think PE should be in the year 2020?
I think it should be part of the whole. I think the thing that comes across more and more as time's going on is the fact that having a child first centered education system helps everybody. And so PE should be an integral part of that, and the same as music and the arts, as well as the academic subjects as well. And not necessarily seeing PE as a separate entity with everything else that's going on. It's an integral part of who you are, understanding the physical elements in terms of the body and stretching and game sports and all of those sorts of things to do with movement, which was one of the things that came out of the season, the movement idea, rather than it being a game-orientated kind of exercise. But also taking it through to the fact that it then combines so well with music, which of course everyone in Cypress Woods will know, because that's some of the great stuff that you've done as a whole group of people. But also then taking it into the fact that you can bring things in from the rest of the subjects you're doing. If it's a topic that you're doing, you can bring elements of the topic you're studying into it. If you're doing maths in English, you can use elements of the things that you're learning in those sorts of areas, incorporate it into what you're doing in PE. So rather than it being something you just do on a Tuesday afternoon, which might be something that happens here in the UK, it's an integral part of everything that you're learning all the way through. It helps you learn. It gives you a centre of idea of what it is that you want to do and how you want to make that part of your life, not just as an individual subject. And that seems to me where people start getting excited about it. And then you can fit it into your life the best way you can, depending on how sporty you are, in inverted commas. That doesn't really matter. It's integral to you, no matter what your ability and what your sort of real passions are.
So you don't have to be an athlete. You don't have, PE's for everybody, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's the thing. The thing about learning up to the age of 11 and 12 is the fact that you're getting the great chance to learn so many different things across the board. Some things we thrive in, some things we find more difficult, but within it we get a sense of what we're good at, but also what we want to improve at as well. And PE should be an integral part of all of that for our overall health. Whether we go and do competitive sports or not, it's still an integral part of actually our learning and our well-being moving forward.
That's awesome, Mark. Mark, tell the kids, what is your impression over there in the UK, and as the owner of the Education on Fire podcast, what is your impression of what these children are doing with music at PE at Cypress Woods?
So having seen some of the great events that you've managed to organise and put on, what I liked is the inclusivity of it. The fact that when everyone's doing it together, you can do it to the ability that you have within your coordination, within your understanding. The fact that the music gives you a different feeling inside. I mean, that's why I'm a musician. It's why I love doing it would enable me to express myself in a more natural way. Not something I can necessarily do when I was talking about having a PE lesson with the apparatus, for example, but the music together with the academic side, but with the physical exercise side as well, all coming together means I can express myself. It looks like everyone there is having a fantastic time doing it. It gives people the chance to shine. I saw some great solo spots that you were able to do with some people, and I think that community full of coming together to share an experience, but highlighting certain things and then having a theme with that you can really overall enhance the learning of everything that's going on, I think is absolutely fantastic. And I think that comes through in everything that you watch.
That's awesome, Mark. Mark, you talk to people from all over the world, or the world of education. How common is what we do with our PE? Is that, have you run across that in a lot of places?
I haven't come across it in a lot of places, I have to say. I think it is quite unique. I think, and that's the reason I wanted to do the PE season, was because I wanted people to see the sorts of things that you're able to do with your imagination and your creativity. And people might not think that. They might do a one-off thing, which is, like, we're going to have like a gathering at the end of the school year. Let's do some kind of music thing together. I know my kids have done that in their primary school. But it was a little bit more of a lasting, sort of a last-ditch event to do something to add to the overall event, rather than it being an integral part of what you're doing all the time. And so I think it's quite a special thing to have. It's quite a special thing to have going on all the time. And I think these interviews you're doing and the videos that you've made to enable that to happen during the lockdown as well is fantastic, because it just means that it's an essential part of what the learning goes on in that school. And I think that's a real gift and something which you may not fully appreciate when you're in the middle of it, but certainly from the outside, it's not something that would happen in many schools, whether that's in the US, but certainly from around the world. I think it is something quite unique.
That's awesome, Mark. Mark, really appreciate you talking with our kids today. And we'll be in touch. I'm sure this won't be the last time we talk. We're big fans. Well, I'm a huge fan of the Education on Fire podcast. And we've got some future teachers that you're talking to right now. Well, I didn't put this on our questions, but do you have any advice for future teachers?
I think the most important thing, and it's something which comes up a lot as I speak to more and more people, is that the connection, the human connection that you have with the people that you're teaching is absolutely key. Knowing who they are, knowing how they learn, knowing the emotional support that they want. Once you do that and you light their fire, you really understand that they understand you and you understand them, then the learning part of it just takes care of itself. You can then infuse them into the type of subject that you are teaching, whatever that subject happens to be, because you're doing it on a person-to-person level rather than just being a teacher and a student or a teacher and a pupil. And I think if you start from there, you can't go far wrong.
That's beautiful. I often address the kids as future teachers of America, blah blah blah, whatever I'm going to say. So hopefully they'll take that forward. Mark, it's been great having you. Thank you very much, and have a great day.
It's my pleasure. Really great to speak to you, and I wish you all the success in the future. And what a great thing to be able to do for all the pupils you've got at your school.